Hi everyone, my name is Joel Nyaribo. Welcome to the content training. In this session, we're going to go through three simple tricks or three simple principles that will help you to become the best content creators. So, what are we going to cover? We will define what influence is and the three elements that will help you to drive authenticity. I'll share a few examples to spark some ideas on how the three pillars have been used. And then I'll prompt you to think about these content pillars. And lastly, I'll share frameworks to help you continuously build on these skills. So the big question is, what is influence? And to me, influencing is all about connecting with people both online and offline and doing this in a way that moves them to take action towards a particular direction. So is it them using the service or the product that I'm pushing, or is it them changing their behavior and conforming to the ideals that I will be sharing with them? So that to me is, in a sense, what influencing is. And in order to be able to influence more, the three elements that we're going to discuss today will tie into how do you get to do this more successfully. And the first element we're going to discuss is empathy. And the big question to ask ourselves is, what can we do to move our audience emotionally? Knowing that any choices that we make has an emotion tied at the back of it. So some of the ways in which you can be able to leverage this is, number one, think about your audience while creating your content. Have your audience at the very center of the thought process of the entire process of creating content. Number two, identifying the different things that moves your audience will help you to understand their desires, their dreams, their aspirations, and their motivations in life. And then number three, understanding your content from the receiver's point of view. This will give you a sense to appreciate how they get to consume the content you'll be creating, and this gives you another lens to view content even as you're preparing it. Number four, use of familiar language. This is to ensure that your points get home. They don't need to spend more time translating the content and thinking out what it is that you're trying to drive at. And lastly, speaking from past experience, because people tend to relate to first-hand experiences because either they themselves or someone they know went through the same experience. Also, at times, you can be able to speak from secondary and tertiary perspective. So now that you have been able to know how to attach emotions to the content you're creating, what's the next thing that your audience will be looking forward to? That would be value. And the big question here is, what benefits do your friends or followers stand to get from your content? And the two main ways in which you can be able to present this is, number one, through highlighting the unique selling points of the service or the product you're talking about. And number two is giving live scenarios on how the product or service is currently solving needs or problems in the market space and adding value to people's life. Now that you have understood that value is something that people look out for in anything, what's the next thing that you will need to sound more convincing? And the next step is credibility. And the big question here is, how do you get to sound more believable? How can people trust your word? And how do you sound more fulfilling in the content you're sharing? And one of the ways in which you can be able to do this is speaking in your own voice and style. So if you love using English, go ahead and do it. If you love using Swahili, go ahead and do it. If memes are the way in which you can be able to communicate your points very clear and to the point, then you can also do it. Number two, sharing of personal stories and scenarios. See how this ties in from empathy all the way to credibility. And lastly, doing research on the brand and the product, where you're able to get more information about the brand's work, the product they're pushing, get facts that will help you to present a real case study to people, share links to their previous and current works, and also get a few figures to back up the facts that you're sharing. And you see how each element plays into the other and complements each of the elements that we've spoken about, and together they form a homogeneous content that people can be able to relate to. So now I can be able to say without any doubt that you can tell when a content piece is missing to translate to great content. So let's see a couple of samples. And while you listen to it, think of it in the framework, empathy, value, and credibility. So our acronym will be EVC from this point henceforth. All right, I hope we were able to get that. Let's move on to the next sample post. And the big question here is, what elements come out strongly on this particular post? Food for thought. All right, as we come to a close, I'd want to leave us with the Wowzi caption checklist that anytime you are creating content, you need to have these next to you so that you can be able to tick all these aspects when you're creating content. So question to ask yourself is, does my content move my audience emotionally? Have I highlighted the unique selling point for the product or the brand? And lastly, am I using a personal, relatable story or scenario to share with my audience? Also, these are ways in which you can be able to get in touch with our customer support team. So if you can be able to see the icon where my cursor is hovering over, that's where you can be able to have a conversation with our customer support personnel. And here are our contacts to reach out to our teams in the various countries, and our email in case you'd want to write to us. Till next time, have a lovely evening.